Update. Husband 33 male and I 26 female were child-free. Then took in his sister's kids. Now I'm pregnant and terrified. Original story. I was always on the fence about kids until I met my husband 6 years ago. He made it clear he does not want kids at all, but I agreed to be with him without having kids. A few years ago, his sister was deemed unfit to parent. She was a single mother to a preteen girl and a young boy, and their caseworker asked how we would feel about taking them in. I said that I was in favor, as growing up my life was nearly identical. Parents deemed unfit and taken in by my aunt, which was the best thing for me. But I let my husband make the final choice, as they're his family, and he's the one who was resolute on being child-free. He said that we could take them, but told me that I would need to do the kid stuff, meaning everything from discipline to doctor visits. I agreed. Right from the time they moved in, he began distancing himself. He'd stay late at work or shut himself at the office all day, and barely interact with his niece and nephew, while I, as promised, handled all the kid stuff. However, him distancing himself upset them, and when I would bring this up to him, he would only ever respond that he was child-free, and I knew what I signed up for. The full legal adoption was completed last year, and the kids have been in therapy since we took them in. 4 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. My husband said that we could keep the baby and he would be involved. But once I was past the termination deadline, said that the same rules apply to this child as to his niece and nephew, and he claimed otherwise before this as he didn't want me to terminate. I don't want this. It's not like I intentionally got pregnant. It was an accident, and I was fine being child-free if it meant I got to be with him. But life clearly had other plans, and I love all 3 of these kids. I can see how much it hurts the older kids for their uncle/legal father to completely ignore them, and I don't want that for the baby. But I feel completely trapped and I don't see a way out. I don't expect to change my husband's mind on kids, but is there anything I can do to improve the situation for anyone involved? Now for the top advice before reading the update. He's not child-free at all. He's responsibility-free. I just want to say that I don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting kids because you don't want the responsibility. But there is something very, very wrong with putting that responsibility all on someone else and having the nerve to call yourself a parent. What? He dumped his family issues on you to appease your want for children and then locked himself away. And when you got pregnant, he hid information from you about his feelings on it so you wouldn't terminate. Excuse me? I know he's child-free, but then don't bring 3 freaking kids into your house. He wasn't fair to you and stupid. Wow, what a display of the intelligence and foresight of the human race. Your husband is already threatening your niece and nephew with negative feelings of self-worth, and all that comes with not caring about them and hating the idea of them. They're definitely not in the best parenting scenario despite the tons of hard work I'm sure you're doing. Imagine what that'd be like with another kid. It's your baby, but I think you might have to bottom line this. Either he is completely present for the baby and his goddamn niece and nephew, now his son and daughter legally may add, because he said so before so you wouldn't terminate, or there will be consequences. He needs to live with the result of his actions and he needs to step above his pettiness. My 3 problems are these. He expected you to take on the entire burden for his niece and nephew, which are his family, so it should be his concern first and foremost. He hasn't stepped above his wish to be child-free to help his niece and nephew, even though he said it wasn't his job. That's not a fair position to put you in. Said he's literally locked himself in his room, like a teenager throwing a tantrum. Finally, he lied to you. About your own kid. He said he would be present for it, which should be obvious, which was a lie only so you wouldn't terminate the child. So you didn't, and you're pretty much irreversibly pregnant. For what reason exactly? What does he get out of this but another child to avoid? So he needs to grow up and be there for his niece and nephew, and be a father for your/his baby. It's the least he could do. If your husband didn't want children and didn't have a vasectomy and continued to be intimate with you, then he's as responsible for his child as you are, and he needs to step up and handle the situation he is in, not the mythical situation he wishes he was in. If you have a child, you step up and be a parent. If you adopt children, they are yours, and you have to step up. Neglect is mistreatment. Placing all the parenting responsibilities on you is emotional abuse. Thinking that it's at all acceptable to ignore his own child is almost sociopathic. It would also greatly harm the child. If he doesn't see the need for at least going to some counseling to deal with the fact that, like most of us, his reality doesn't meet up with what he thought it would be, then I don't know what you can do to change his mind. Are there any parents, siblings, or good friends you can ask for help to get him to go talk to a professional with you? The birth control situation was complicated, but it does take two to tango, and he made a choice to take his niece and nephew in. I don't think he's a sociopath, and I don't think he's intended to mistreat anyone, but that's the effect he's had on us. He doesn't see counseling as a legitimate avenue, and all of our extended family relationships are complicated in one way or another, so I'm not sure how much help reaching out would be. And now for the update. As I stated in my first post, my family situation is complicated, and the family members I feel that I could turn to in a crisis form a very short list. I tried contacting my husband's parents and asking them for help. As while we had our issues, I figured that helping their grandchildren would take priority. Not only would they not help, but they informed my husband that I was planning to leave him. This caused a fight the day after my first post, in which my husband and I both said some things, and it doesn't look like we're going to come back from it. I'm still working through my feelings on that. After the fight, I reached out to my aunt, and she told me to contact my grandparents who live nearby. I was hesitant as I have no real relationship with them and struggle to consider them family, so I was hardly expecting a warm welcome. But that is what I got. It was awkward as I've only met them a few times in my entire life, but they seemed happy to see me. They were a little shocked that I had a preteen and young child with me, but seem equally happy to have adopted great-grandkids as they are at the baby on the way. The kids and I are looking into other living arrangements, but we're safe for now. Thank you for the responses to my first post. It wasn't easy to read, but I had to hear it. I wasn't even going to update, but some of you were just so nice about it that I felt like I had to. Wow, I was so angry at your ex-husband reading the other post. It's one thing not to want to do all the organizing and practical stuff for kids, another to emotionally neglect them entirely. And lied to you during your pregnancy so you wouldn't terminate? What a piece of work. Don't feel guilty about getting all the child support you can from that waste of skin. I'm a random Reddit user, and I approve this message. As so many others pointed out on the original post, that man was using being child-free as an excuse to neglect his kids. Once you agree to take in 2 kids, you no longer get to be child-free. Normally, I only lurk, but that prick move from his parents was just horrendous. Wow. Don't let them see the kids or contact them. If they want a relationship with them, they can have it on his time after custody is arranged, unless of course he doesn't want any time. In which case, let them sleep in the bed they made. Screw them. I honestly thought I would be safe enough with his parents. I knew they didn't like me, but they also had a poor relationship with my husband, but loved kids. So I figured that all of that combined would result in them at the very least not telling him. We haven't discussed it, but I already know that he won't want any custody. I just don't know what to do about his parents. As the kids have already lost so many people, I don't want to be the reason they lose their grandparents. You won't be the reason they lose their grandparents. Their grandparents will cause it. Wow, so you took his sister's kids too. You sound like a saint. I wasn't going to leave them with him. The youngest calls me mom. They're my kids, as far as I'm concerned. I have also legally adopted them, so I'm in the clear on that too. Saint is definitely an overstatement though, lol. Make sure your soon-to-be ex pays child support for all 3 kids. They deserve the support money. I know, I'm going to sort it. My grandparents offered to help me with any legal fees to make sure I've got full custody and child support, get my things back from the house, and I don't get screwed over the divorce. I just need a minute before I can think about divorcing. Now for the next story. I hate my son and I want to leave my wife. My wife and I never wanted children, and when she got pregnant, it was a shock. I have a naturally low sperm count, which made vasectomy pretty moot and with my confidence in rubbers. My wife did a 180 and told me she loved a child and wanted to have it. I was shocked and tried to convince her to no avail. He's 2 now, my son, and while my wife loves him, I only harbor resentment. I know I was at fault for his existence, but I blame my wife as well because she clearly wasn't on the same page as me. I've been going to therapy to cope, and the therapist said there was nothing to fix. Not wanting a child isn't a problem, and I need to take a step back from it all. After discussing with him, he told me to take a break from the whole family for some time and see. If I enjoyed it, I would know my answer. The feeling of no longer being with my son was the best thing in my life. My wife and I have been hashing things out as well because of my clear discomfort. I'm thinking of divorcing her. I'm not happy with her anymore and I want to move on. I would obviously still pay child support, which leads me to my question. If I divorce her and give up custody, should I be involved in my son's life? Now for the advice. No. If you don't want him and don't love him, he'll know that. Kids aren't dumb. He'll be better off if you leave. Pay your required support payments and don't complicate his life. As someone whose father left me at 11, I agree. I grew up resenting my absent dad, but now I'm 26 and rarely think about it. Just leave. Don't reach out to make yourself feel better. My father abandoned us when I was a toddler and kept showing up every so often to prove he was involved. It was a nightmare. I left my ex last year because I didn't want to be a dad, and he was a horrible person. He is mad I left him, so he fights for visitation, and I have to let him take our son. Son is almost 2 years old. I am worried that our son will be more hurt by his father's lame attempts at pretending he wants to be a dad, versus if his dad left and he never saw him again. Honestly, it seems like you have to leave. Pay your child support and stay gone. Anytime you come popping back in out of guilt or whatever, and maybe you're just going to add more trauma to your son's life. If you're leaving, stay gone and make payments. I don't know what else to say. If I had an award, I would give it to you. Partner's dad popped in out of guilt throughout childhood and spread rumors about mom. It's a living hell. Stay gone. Now for the last story. My 35 female husband 35 male seems to think childcare has nothing to do with him. So, we have 3 kids, 7-year-old boy, 4-year-old girl, and 7 months boy. Childcare has always been my problem to handle, even though I have not wanted it to be. Admittedly though, I am definitely the one who does a lot of this type of stuff in the house. It has been probably my largest source of stress over the past few years because childcare in America is awful. I have been lucky to have had a lot of help from family, but ultimately have not had reliable help for long over the years, and have been stuck making it work as best as I can through time off, work from home, and even having times where my kids are sitting in virtual meetings with me. My husband leaves for work early in the morning. I am an executive at a tech startup, and I have been lucky to have a lot of flexibility in my work, but ultimately it is a very high-pressure job. This past few weeks have been a disaster. Due to challenges with care, I hired an additional babysitter who ended up being an absolute nightmare. We should not have her babysitting our kids, not because they're unsafe, other reasons for this, but I'm so desperate I'm having her come still until I find other care. I figure I'm home so I can at least supervise. Our other childcare provider quits with no notice. Personal issues, definitely not us. So I was staring down a full work week with no childcare. I brought this up to my husband last night and he kind of just shut down. We went back and forth, but ultimately when I told him I might need him to take a day off of work to help, he just said he couldn't take a day off. I pointed out to him that I couldn't just take a week off without notice and my job matters too. In fact, I'm the primary breadwinner. He just walked away and left it at that. So I texted him today again to broach the topic, like 50 times now that I've brought up this problem that I don't know what to do, and again told him that I can't do this week without help. He hasn't responded yet, but it really got me thinking about how unacceptable this is. We've had 7 years of this. I have had multiple sobbing fits of stress. I've always kind of thought that he would help if I would let him, but I was the problem because I just did it all. But then here I am begging him for help over the past few weeks, and he is just ignoring me? I'm thinking if he doesn't respond to my text today and avoids it, that I'm going to ask for a separation. I honestly do think I would never find someone that I love as much as him. What we have is genuinely really special. But I just feel like this crosses a line of disrespect for me. It's one thing to say can't take off work and sit down and start offering ideas, but he just legit left this problem for me to deal with, and continues to do so despite having time to collect his thoughts. One thing I want to note, so that he doesn't get raked through the coals, he is going through a really tough time right now. His mom, who he has a strained relationship with, is slowly dying and has been more difficult than ever. His dad has gotten really mean and difficult as well. It has been brutal this past few weeks. So, am I crazy? Is this just something where he's so stressed he's just unplugging? I just don't even know. Edited to add. A few clarifications here. Husband is definitely an involved dad and partner. Some people have pointed out that I listed the fun stuff that he does, and that's valid. It definitely got me thinking. He does the unfun stuff, but it absolutely takes nagging for me. I already have him reading Fair Play, and I also am going to ask that we start up marriage counseling. What we have is genuinely really special. He just walked away and left it at that? Not sure I believe it's special enough to put up with this. He won't even have the conversation? How can you fix a problem he won't even talk about? How can you fix any problem if you won't talk about it? I couldn't deal with that in a relationship myself. Well, he just texted me a full apology for how he reacted and started jumping to ideas for her to reach out to. That's the problem sometimes. It just takes 24 hours to get to where we should have been yesterday. I'm gonna be blunt here. What you have isn't that special. If he doesn't give a damn that his wife is breaking down sobbing over the stress of caring for kids that are 50% his, it stonewalls you when you try to hold him accountable for doing his share around house. Love is a smaller part of marriage than partnership. It just is. And he's a bad partner. I would sit him down and calmly tell him that you have already contemplated divorce over this issue, and that if he does not pitch in to help with the kids, it will eventually end your marriage. I agree with everything you said, except I would lose my crap on him. In my experience, continuing to be polite in situations like this just doesn't work. Always being polite is hurting us. The disrespect continues. The refusal to see us as women continues because there is no consequence. OP, I want to say that I feel horribly for you, watching this man's back as it turned it towards you yet again. I'm sorry that he did that to you. Update. My boyfriend 26 male found out I'm 26 female, rich, and started using it against me. Original story. My boyfriend and I met through a dating app 8 months ago, and we've had a good steady relationship. I come from a well-off family, but my parents never spoiled me. They taught me to not indulge in excess and to keep my privilege in mind when interacting with people. I'm currently living in an apartment with only my salary. I haven't told my boyfriend about my wealth. I wasn't actively hiding it just didn't come up. My birthday was a few weeks ago and my parents threw a party at our home. Our home is a medium-sized villa. My boyfriend started scowling when I told him that that was the home I grew up in. When I asked him about it, he told me it was nothing and started smiling again. His mood got worse as more and more of my parents' rich friends started coming in. When I asked him about it the next day, he just told me that he was feeling a little sick. After we got back, he asked me why I hid the fact that I was rich. I told him that I wasn't hiding it, but he started bringing it up in every conversation after that, like telling me that I didn't know how to cook properly because I was spoiled. He brought it up with his friends, telling them I was a spoiled princess who had everything handed to me. It started as jokes, but it got more hostile as the days went on. When I brought this up, he told me I didn't know normal people's problems because I was rich. Did I do something wrong? What should I do? Now for the top advice before reading the update. Well, technically you're not rich. Your parents are. Did he discuss his parents' income with you when you started dating? Drop the man-child though. He doesn't get to dismiss your feelings now due to his own assumptions. Not only that, but he's actively insulting her. Relationships can survive many things, but they cannot survive contempt. What she describes is contempt. Contempt is one of the 4 relationship killers. The others are criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. 3 words. Only 8 months. He's 26 years old and acting like a teenage a-hole. Don't waste your time on this guy. Heads up, if you decide to dump him, he might tell people because he was too poor for you. If you got any of these rude jokes on text, I would save them. He will definitely tell people that's the reason. But if they don't have any mutuals, I honestly wouldn't even worry about what he says in the end. Just dump him and move on. You've got to end this. This is clearly something he's incredibly insecure about. It's only going to get worse. What happens later? He starts asking for money, or starts making you feel like crap about something you had no control about growing up. Wealth is success, and if someone is jealous of that, it's ridiculous. Exactly. You did nothing wrong. He's obviously very class conscious and has preconceived ideas of people who have money. You sound like a humble human being, and he's an a-hole for not admiring that you live by your own means when you don't technically have to. It doesn't sound like it'll get better without him doing some soul-searching and confronting his prejudice, but that doesn't mean you have to accompany him on his journey. Good luck. And now for the update. After I made a Reddit post, I tried to have a conversation with him, but he kept stonewalling me. He made more snide comments, and so I decided to break up. When I told him that I was leaving him, it felt like he was expecting it. He called me a rich witch and went on a rant about how I was leaving him because he was poor. Some commenters told me to expect this, but it still came as a shock. He and I have very good salaries, and I don't know why he said that. He was a good person most of the time I knew him. Some people ask me why I didn't warn him about my wealth. All my relationships before him were with people in my social class, so the expectation of wealth was implicit. Having wealth was not a big deal in any of my previous relationships, so I assumed it was the same in this one too. I'll warn my partners before taking them home into future relationships. This is a tangent, but I wanted to talk about "I'm not rich, my parents are" thing that many comments suggested. A lot of my friends from wealthy families used that line as a defense, but it is misleading. If I wanted to, I could dip into my parents' finances. I choose not to, but it is still my wealth too. It might technically be my parents' money, but it still makes me wealthy. And having wealthy parents comes with a lot of privileges even if I don't actively use their money. I never had to work a job when I was studying. I had access to the best schooling. I don't have student loans, and my parents' connections open a lot of doors. Having a safety net let me find what I was good at and let me take risks. So unless they are estranged from their families, children from wealthy families are also wealthy. I thank all the people who commented in my original post and gave me advice. I felt like I was doing something wrong, but you made me see that it was his insecurity and jealousy that was the issue. Having a safety net let me find what I was good at and let me take risks. Excellent point. A lot of people don't understand how big of a deal that is. Even if you're not taking risks, just knowing if you get laid off, get injured, have your house burned down or whatever, that you have a safe place to go to and money to get back on your feet can be a huge stress relief. I'm glad Opie recognizes and appreciates what she has. Everything she said is true. Boyfriend is a jerk, and you're well rid of him, Opie. As someone who has never had a safety net, my dad died when I was 18. My mom had a breakdown and totally became a different person to me when that happened. I can't even express how much that safety net matters. You might not know how important that is when you have it, but when you don't, oh wow, life can suck. You sound like you have a good head on your shoulders. I'm sorry, pulled the "because I'm poor" card, but you know it isn't true, and don't internalize it. You broke up with him because he was acting like an a-hole. What upsets me about this is that you have such a great attitude about this, but your ex still couldn't cope. I grew up very poor, but my friends were quite well off as I lived in a fairly wealthy area. Like you, they weren't total wankers, so this wasn't an issue. I can't see what your ex's problem is here. I agree. I'm also a very salty, poor person, and I chase the money in all I do because I'm so incredibly jealous of rich people. But if I dated someone well off, I wouldn't be hateful. I would be happy I could be marrying into it. Maybe it's a gender thing, and the dude's been fine knowing him and her, possibly. Make the same salary. However, when he found out about her family, he then immediately put her in a category for being more rich and more wealthy, and thus his fragile ego shattered. Next story is titled, Crazy Update. My 21 female boyfriend, 23 male of 10 months, just told me today he doesn't like the idea of present giving and I shouldn't expect any for Christmas. I've already spent $100+ on him. Original story. I've been dating Rob since February, and I thought things were going really well. Until today. I know it's already ridiculously late to speak about presents, and I wish we discussed this earlier. I just assumed even if we hadn't spoken about giving presents, we would still be exchanging some. Well, today I brought up that I couldn't wait for Christmas, and I was wondering what my parents were going to get me, and he started going off about how he's so against presents and the idea of gifts. I was taken aback and asked, "So you're not giving me anything?" And I said, "Nah." He told me he's never bought anything for anyone, so I shouldn't expect to be different. We spoke for a long while about why and such, but it's not important, as in the end he still isn't going to give me anything. I feel as if things have changed since this conversation, in only a few hours. I feel as if I'm obviously not too important to him if he hasn't gone out of his way to get me even a tiny gift. I made it clear I do like giving and receiving presents, and I told him I'd already bought his, so he said to take his then. Is it wrong of me to not want to give him his presents if I won't be receiving one? I think it's a little selfish as going to accept his present without giving me anything. I don't want to break up, but I'm wondering how important this relationship is to him. This may sound melodramatic, but I've never been with someone with such odd views on Christmas. What do you guys think? Should I take his present back? Should I give it to him and ask if he'll make an exception and buy me at least a little something? Or should I keep the presents for myself? Also, if things were going to go downhill, is this a ridiculous reason to break up over? Have you ever met someone with similar opinions? Thanks in advance. Now for the advice before the update. I told him I'd already bought his, so he said to take his then. I'm not getting you anything, but I'll happily accept $100+ of gifts you bought for me without reciprocating. Yeah, no. You take that stuff back and buy yourself a nice gift. No kidding. That response is not the response of somebody with a philosophical objection to present giving. That is the response of a selfish, greedy person. Can you return his gift? If you're not going to receive anything, then neither should he. And if he complains, you can tell him that too. You said you're not really a gift kind of guy, and since I won't be getting anything, I didn't think it was fair that I spent this much money on you. I might try to get away from explicitly mentioning money, so it seems less like a tit-for-tat situation. Maybe more like, you said you're not really a gift kind of guy. When I bought a gift for you, I thought we were going to share an experience of exchanging gifts. It's not the same if we can't have the moment together, so I just returned it. He sounds like a bit of a nay, to be honest. It's not just about him not believing in gifts. That's fine. What rubs me the wrong way is that I basically told you that you were no more special to him than anyone else has ever been with. I worked a long time in retail, and I think Christmas is pretty cheesy and stupid. But it makes a lot of people close to me happy, including my significant other, and I still participate every year. It's not really about the gifts, it's about making people feel good. If he cared about you, he'd do the same. And now for the crazy update. Firstly, thank you so much, guys. I received so many helpful comments and messages, and I'm truly very grateful. It was nice to see everyone's opinions and have some insight. Lots of things has happened since I wrote this post, and it's been pretty hectic. I decided to keep the gift I got him. It was 2 games for the PS4, and because I like gaming and I didn't have those games, I figured I'd keep them for myself. I knew taking them back would be pointless because I'd end up buying something similar anyway. So I opened them as I was feeling way too stressed about this and played them happily. It did cheer me up a bit, and so did calling a few friends. So I decided to speak to him. I went over to his house, and I asked him if this meant I'd not be getting presents for my birthday or Valentine's either. I just said those holidays were different. Apparently, the only holiday he was against giving gifts on is Christmas. This confused me even more. Because if he's against present giving, shouldn't it be for all holidays and not just one? I asked him if it had to do with religious reasons, and he said no. He just disliked the idea of Christmas, and that was it. He had been brought up thinking it wasn't normal to give presents on Christmas. Then I brought up another point that was mentioned a few times in the comments. How come I wasn't an exception? I should be just a little bit important to him, I hope, and therefore he could have bought me something anyway just because I'm his girlfriend. And it would have been nice to receive something. He told me never make an exception for anyone because those were his beliefs, and anyone who dated him would need to understand and respect that. We argued for a long time. Like I'm thinking we spent at least 4 hours just sitting in his room discussing why he was so against giving me anything. Also, why was he so alright with buying me something for my birthday and Valentine's, but not Christmas? I would understand if it was for religious reasons, but he clearly stated it had nothing to do with that. He blamed it on his parents, which makes the next part even more interesting. His mother comes into the room, asking us to come into the living room. I knew they were leaving on the 24th for a small vacation, so I was wondering if this was a small goodbye, or maybe even perhaps to scold us for yelling at each other. The house is big, but I don't doubt they could have heard a little bit. And then I was speechless. Sitting on a dining table are his parents and 6 wrapped up gifts. I looked at him and was like, really? You don't celebrate giving presents on Christmas because your parents are against it, but they do? The parents sat us down and gave each of us a gift, and told us to open it now, and we'd have our own small Christmas just a day before. I opened it. It was a lovely gift. thank them, etc., all while killing my boyfriend mentally. I was a little annoyed. And then this happens. He starts grinning while I'm glaring and takes out a gift. For me. I want to cry at this point. What on earth is actually going on? He hands me the gift. It is a Swarovski necklace, looking pretty expensive. He smiles. The parents leave to give us some space and I smile back, still really freaking confused. He said it was hard to try and hide this gift while I was yelling at him earlier, but all along he had made an exception for me. All of it was a surprise. He doesn't believe in present giving, but still had bought me one anyway just because he thought I deserved it. So at this point, he still doesn't believe in giving anyone presents, but he did buy me one. I was immediately really happy and hugged him. It's a lovely necklace, and I apologized over and over again for yelling. We have a really nice time and head back to the bedroom and watch TV, cuddling and having a sweet time. He then asks for his present. I tell him I've opened them already and kept them for myself, so I'm going to need time to buy him a new one. He suddenly becomes furious. I explained he told me he wasn't going to get me something, so obviously I wasn't going to be giving him one if I wasn't supposed to expect anything back. Gets really mad, saying I should have kept the present for him, because in the end he did get me something. But how was I supposed to know that? He begins to scream about how I'm an ungrateful cow, and how he shouldn't have spent a penny on me. His mother comes in, tells him to calm down, and he screams at me to leave the house and he never wants to see me again. I do, and take the necklace. Perhaps a bad move. I explained I will buy him a new gift, a better one, and still he's too angry at me to understand he only needs to wait a day. I left and came home really confused. I tried calling and he hasn't answered. I've been calling since I left the house 3 hours ago. Guys, I don't know what to do. I'm so confused, and today has been one hell of a day. Any advice is appreciated. I'm thinking of going back there tomorrow. I'm sorry if this wasn't written the best way. My head is all over the place. I've also spoken to my best friends, and they're also confused as hell. Thanks in advance. So, he tells you that he doesn't want to exchange gifts, then gets upset when you believe him? Sounds like a real winner you've got there. Yep, how dare she not read his mind? Don't you know anything about Christmas magic, OP? Yeah, he's a jerk, who threw a fit and offended you over something you could not possibly know, OP. I can't fathom how he thought it's gonna play out. Also, have fun playing games while wearing an expensive necklace. And hopefully celebrating being jerk-free from now on. Can you imagine living your life with a person who thinks it's okay to play games with people's emotions like that? Awful. What happened here was, he had a very specific scenario worked out in which you were going to be swept off your feet by the surprise necklace. What he didn't take into account is that, when you surprise people, you risk them having an unpredictable reaction. Now he is butthurt that you didn't react the way he scripted everything out in his head. I think you should send the necklace back and break up, but if you do try to work it out, you need to tell him to be more respectful and show more empathy. This whole exchange showed that, in the process of giving you a gift, he was entirely focused on himself. Why would you try to work it out with someone who called you a cow to your face? Not only that, but the whole family dynamic is super weird. The parents heard them arguing for hours over this, and then just surprises them with gifts? And all the mom has to say over her crazy son calling his girlfriend an ungrateful cow and leave the house, never to return, is a simple calm down? Either this is usual behavior on the son's part, or it's possibly learned behavior from the dad. Still don't want any of that nope cake. That is some weird game playing on the part of the boyfriend. That kind of pranking and gotcha is just plain sicko. He kept you in his room 4 damn hours telling you why he won't give you a gift, and then pulls the old, "Where's my gift?" A friend doesn't treat a friend like that. I would not find his behavior forgivable, and would return the necklace. And I surely would not want to spend the next few years trying to figure out when he is pranking me and when he's being truthful. I'd end the relationship.